All right, are you good? Are you ready? Are you
Yeah,
excited?
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, you're
Ready.
so unprepared. You're so unprepared. I haven't told you anything. I haven't given you any
I don't
questions.
know anything. I
Yeah, you
know
know nothing.
absolutely nothing.
All right. Well, this is episode 7 of Yeah for Real. This is so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm host Isaac, and who are you?
Yeah, I'm Kate Hall, and I am your sister-in-law.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah,
What do you
that's who
what
I
do you
am.
do? Like why like what is your I guess I asked this to Marlena and she was like, what do I sorry. So I would say
What do
like
I do?
yeah.
I'm a public defender.
Okay, awesome.
Um, yeah. So I represent people who are charged with crimes who don't have any money to buy a lawyer.
Amazing. And so what are we going to talk about today? Because you're coming to the podcast with an idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I thought, we could talk about crime,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
the our criminal justice system and
Perfect.
the how it's, just totally awesome and nailing it and just doing great in all
Yeah.
aspects. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. I would love to talk about how amazing our criminal justice system is. So before we get to the criminal justice system, I guess I'm curious, like, what is an average day at work for
Mhm.
you? Like, what,
Yeah.
just in case, someone, I mean, I know, but like, just
Yeah.
in case someone doesn't really know, like, okay, like public defender, whatever, like,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question. So, an average day for me, and it's a little bit, so I started working in California about a
uh-huh.
year and a half ago. So it's a little bit different now than it was before when I worked in New York, but it might be I start being in court at around 8:30 in the morning, and there's like a bunch of people there in the courtroom, and they've got like all different kinds of cases. There's lawyers, there's the DAs, there's a judge, and so I might spend part of the morning talking to clients, doing like a hearing, um, and then in the afternoon I might talk to judges about like trying to settle cases, so like people who want to plead guilty. And then, if I have time at my desk, I might like try and do some research or write a motion or, call my clients who are supposed to be in court the next day.
Hmm.
And so you're wearing like a lot of different hats all the time. You're sort of like, you got to wear one hat to like be in front of the judge and be like, you know, formal, and you got to wear a different hat to be able to talk to your clients about
Yeah.
like, here's the deal, here's what your case is, and you got to wear an even different hat to like talk to the DA and try and be like, listen, man, like let's settle this case, like let's not have it be going on forever. So you're always just kind of tap dancing a little bit. You're like bouncing from place to place, wearing different hats all the time, and yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what kind of clients do you have?
Yeah, so I mean, so a lot of my clients range from, I could have people who are like teenagers, like in their teens, so like just coming out of being children, really, to, all ages, right? So people like any adult charged with a felony, so charged with a crime that's more serious than like just simple theft or like possession of drugs, like those kinds of things.
Hmm.
Those are misdemeanors. The cases that I represent people on are felonies. So could be anything from like a theft of more value, so stealing stuff that's more expensive, to the more serious crimes like, assault, murder, that kind of stuff. And, you know, everybody has something in common because they can't afford to, you know, but pay for a lawyer. So they qualify as indigent. But that can mean, anything from like they're homeless and they just have no money at all to like they have a home and they, are sort of live in the community, pay rent and whatever. They just are too poor to be able to afford a lawyer.
Okay. And so what like you mentioned like violent crimes. Like
Mhm.
I guess that'll be like that's something that would be like, whoa,
Yeah.
what percentage of your clients are like violent crime offenders?
That's a good question. I would say probably like looking at my caseload right now, um, I would say probably like maybe half of my clients are charged with a crime that is doesn't qualify as violent.
Hmm.
So like that could be theft or fraud or um, writing a bad check, like kind of vandalism. And maybe half of them are charged with something that could be termed as violent, and it might be not something that's like the law says is a violent crime, but like an assault is a violent crime,
Hmm.
right? Um, so it's probably half.
Okay. And do you find that like there's a difference between those two kinds of clients, or do you sort of feel like everyone's sort of in the same boat?
I feel like is there a difference between the clients? Um,
Or even in your own
I
experience, like
yeah.
do you have like different feelings about representing someone who has
Mm.
committed a violent crime versus someone who hasn't committed a violent crime, like that kind of thing?
Yeah. So that's a great question. It's a question that I think public defenders get asked a lot. Like how can you represent somebody who's guilty, or like how can you, be standing next to somebody who's like done this, really terrible thing. And to be honest, like it makes no difference to me. I mean, and from you could give like a sort of technical legal explanation for that like everybody's innocent until, proven guilty. But like really what it is um if you spend a lot of time with somebody and learn their story and work with them and strategize with them, it's really hard not to develop a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And so I've had really good relationships with clients of mine that are charged with really violent, terrible things. And I've had really bad relationships with people who are charged with, financial crimes or like things that have nothing to do with violence.
Hmm.
So part of it depends on like the person and like, kind of, because I mean, look, like if you're if you're like just talking about violence, right? If you're committing some kind of violent crime, um, there's probably like something has gone wrong, right? And this is like assuming the person actually has done what they're charged with, because obviously some people are innocent, some people haven't done what they're charged with. But if you've done something violent, something has gone wrong, right? Like either you've gotten into a situation where you had to defend yourself, or, like something's wrong in your mind that's causing you to uh, behave in a way that's, not like you can't be in functional society without
Hmm.
doing something violent, or, something else like you've gotten into involved in a gang, or like, you're so destitute that you need to like steal, and then that turns into like you're stealing and you're using some violence and getting away with the property, and that's robbery. So like something's gone wrong, right? um but I don't think there's really a difference in like the client population. Like the client population is really kind of like it's poor people, right? And it's
Yeah.
like people who have poor people problems. Um, but the when you are charged with a violent crime, the consequences are a lot more serious. So that's different. But I don't know if my relationship with the clients is different. If that makes sense.
Okay. So I feel like you're talking a lot about like you talk about their past, you learn a lot about them. Would you say that like and would you say that you're at all like a pseudo therapist for some of these
Yeah,
people?
I think like you just end up having a lot of conversations with people that like, you know, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a therapist, I'm not trained in either of those things. I'm trained in law. But you have to have people skills
Yeah.
in order to do the job. And a lot of people who get arrested are very justifiably angry at the situation. They might be
Hmm.
angry at the way that the cops treated them. They might, feel either correctly or not, or like somewhere in between, that they shouldn't have gotten arrested in the first place. Or they might feel that, you know, even if their arrest was fair, that their consequences are too serious. So like a lot of people are frustrated, and a lot of
Hmm.
that frustration gets directed toward me because I'm the person standing in front of them who's like, "Hey, man, you probably going to prison."
Yeah.
You know? Like they're probably not happy to hear that. So yeah, a lot of the time that I spend with clients is like, I mean, it's not like tell me about your day, but like,
Yeah.
it does, you have to be compassionate, and you have to
Yeah.
sort of have some understanding, and it's not going to be helpful to my clients if I just sit down and like talk law with them and don't have any moment of like, hey, so like this is what you're charged with. Can you like tell me what's going on with you? Or like, like give me some piece of information. Like you can't be like a robot and like sit down
Yeah.
and be like, you've got this crime and this consequence, and like, what do you want to do? You know?
Yeah. Also, because they don't understand, like, I feel like especially, I mean, this
Yeah,
is the case for everyone, but I feel like maybe even more so your client base. Like, you have to translate a little bit. Like, not most people don't
totally.
understand the legal
Yeah.
system very well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I guess I wanted to ask you one last question before we talk about the legal system, which is, has there been a difference moving from California? Like, do you find that your job is different in any way that you were expecting, weren't expecting?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, and I think like some in some ways that I was expecting, in some ways I wasn't. So one thing is that so for 7 years I practiced in Manhattan, and I it's anybody who's arrested for a crime that happened on the island of Manhattan, so in New York City. And the thing about New York is that people go to Manhattan to work, they go to, buy stuff. And so a lot of my clients either didn't live in Manhattan, they lived in Brooklyn or the Bronx or Queens or Staten Island, or they did live in Manhattan, but they lived miles away from the courthouse, so
Yeah.
like almost everybody who's coming to, me as a lawyer in Manhattan is coming on the subway, they're coming long distances. They live in parts of the city that I don't have any like personal interaction with. And in California, where I practice now, so, there's no subway. It's I mean, I think it's like distance area, it's probably like like a middle-sized county. But almost everybody has cars, or if they don't have
Yeah.
cars, they get rides with people, or they're on the bus. And so I think like I guess I'm this is like a totally convoluted way
No,
of
no,
saying
no.
this, but I see my clients outside of work a lot more often here than I would in New York.
Oh, that's really
So,
interesting.
so like I could, I'm driving around, and sometimes I'll just like see one of my clients like on, they're like, oh, I'm on the avenue, like there's one of my clients. And you might see them out like at Vaughn's, like the shopping center, like grocery
Hmm.
store or whatever. And so that's like really different, but I kind of like I feel more like I'm actually living in the same community with my clients now than I did in New York, which is nice. So that's like a sort of personal, like just whatever. But as far as like the structure of the job, um, I only represent felony clients here in California, and so I only represent people who are charged with more serious cases. In New York, I represented everybody. So like I have misdemeanor clients too, and then like also felony clients.
Hmm.
Um, and that is different because you know, it I mean, look, there are misdemeanor cases that are kind of like more involved, but like in New York, I had, at least a handful of cases that were kind of just, it's like it's either gonna resolve very easily because it's a misdemeanor, or it's just more, they're more simple, they're more like
Yeah.
straightforward cases. And here it's like only clients who are charged with felonies. And then the last difference I would say is, oh my god, I totally just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I don't know. I
That's
just
fine.
lost my
Also,
train of thought
no,
here.
you're totally
But it
good.
is
You're
but it
totally
is
good.
it is very different. And the I had to learn California law to come here.
Yeah.
Um, the the like the things that you need to know in order to understand felony sentencing. So like what kinds of consequences people can get for being convicted of a felony crime are way more complicated here than they
Yeah.
were in New York. So that was like a big learning curve that I had to overcome um, in order
And
to
is that
like be
because
able to.
of different criminal justice laws in California?
Yeah. So, one big thing is like California has this thing called the three strikes law, which like I think a lot of people, even people who are kind of not don't know a lot about the criminal justice system, like they know the kind of the concept of three strikes, like, and so California was the first state to have one, and it's basically at its most basic level, it's like you get convicted of three felonies and you're going to get punished for some like really long period of time. And that's changed a lot. So initially, like when California initially passed the three strikes law, it was that. It was like you get convicted of three felonies and you go away to prison for life.
For
And
life. Wow. Okay.
for life, yeah. And there were horror stories of like people who were convicted of, stealing pizza and then they get a 25-year to life sentence. And since then, California has sort of amended its laws a few different times. And now that three strikes law kind of sits on top of a regular felony sentencing law and they interact in really complicated ways. Um, so that's part of why it's so complicated is that California has this like sort of three different felony sentencing laws that are kind of sitting on top of each other and interacting with each other. And you have to know all of them in order to be able to like tell somebody like, hey, you're charged with this crime. You're gonna be looking at this kind of sentence if you get convicted.
That's really interesting. So is it a little bit more like Frankenstein than New
They're
York?
very Frankenstein. It's very like yeah, it's like a golem, it's like somebody it's like just like but like a, piece of trash from over here and a piece of trash from over here and you put them together and they're like "Ah!"
That's really funny. Okay, so well, I guess very quick question, and this can be a simple answer, but like, do you find that it's less or more progressive than New York's criminal justice system?
See, that's an interest. I don't know if it's a quick question because I there are some ways in which California's laws are like are more progressive. So for a lot of misdemeanor cases, and this is something that I only know because there are people in my office who do misdemeanors. There's this thing called diversion, which means that, so you get arrested for like a simple theft and you don't really have a criminal record. The judge can just say, okay, if you stay out of trouble, I'm just going to dismiss your case.
Yeah,
And so judges can do that for, anything from batteries. So like just like punching somebody in the face, that would be a battery, but like not a felony because it's just sort
yeah,
of a like a simple fight. Like nobody gets really seriously hurt. To drug cases, to thefts, lots of different stuff, right? But even for felonies, one thing that was really surprising to me when I started practicing in California was that there are a lot of felonies where the judge can say, okay, well, this is a felony, but I'm just gonna reduce this to a misdemeanor. I'm just gonna say that this is actually a misdemeanor case, and I'm gonna give you a misdemeanor sentence on it. And there was nothing like that in New York. And so it takes some of the power that prosecutors have back and gives it to the judge. And
mm,
that can sometimes make things a little bit more fair because you can go to the judge and say, yeah, so this person is charged with vandalism because they broke their, ex-boyfriend's window or whatever. And it's charged as a felony because the window was expensive, but she doesn't have a really serious criminal record. Let's just have this be a misdemeanor. And the judge can say, yeah, you know what? I agree with you. So that is much more
hmm
sort of progressive. Um, but then there are ways in which like, I don't know, like the jury pool here, like it's a conservative county. It's,
uh-huh,
the LA is right to the south of us. LA is a very progressive county. LA is also huge. So like depending on where you are in LA, you're probably going to have different politics or you will have different politics. But Ventura County itself is, a lot of people either are cops or work for the cops in some kind of capacity or have family members or friends who are cops. Um, it's a very kind of like a law and order place.
okay. That's really interesting. not what people mostly think about California.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's not, like people I think are like, oh, California liberals crazy and like not this place.
okay. All right. So this is the I mean, this is obviously the part that I'm really excited to talk to you about. We have a criminal justice system in this country.
We sure do.
Um, I I guess well, I guess let me ask you a first question, and this is like a very like a conceptual question.
Hmm.
But like if I like can I like I'll ask you like do you believe that we live in a country that has a system of justice? Like,
Hmm. Um, yeah, so yes, we do we have a justice system. And I think just at its core, our system has a lot of concepts in it that are really wonderful. And that, if you look at other countries, it's like the presumption of innocence, right? So when you're arrested for a crime, you're presumed innocent. And theoretically, right, this is all just sort of like in theory, the government has to, overcome this really big burden in order to overcome that presumption of innocence and prove that you're guilty. And that presumption of innocence was created in order to make sure or help make sure that people don't get convicted of crimes that they didn't commit. And there are other countries, even like, sort of industrialized, powerful countries that don't have that concept. Like
mhm,
in France, I'm pretty sure they don't have a presumption of innocence. They have a and like inquisitorial justice system, and it's not, you don't get the benefit of a presumption of innocence. So we have, the right to not be searched without probable cause, the right to, you know, a right to privacy, right to free speech. I mean, those are not like criminal justice concepts, but we have a lot of like things
mhm.
in our laws, in our constitution that are wonderful in concept. And the problem is that a lot of those concepts have been, um, I mean, I don't want to say perverted. And but by the way, like anything that I say here is my own personal view. It's not the view of my employer. Just putting that out there. So a lot of those concepts have they either don't get applied in reality the way that they're supposed to be
Yeah.
applied, or they're kind of only used in favor of people who have wealth and power. And people like the people that I represent
Right.
don't really get to benefit from that presumption of innocence, even though in theory they have it.
Okay. So would it be correct to say that you see it less as a constitutional problem and more as a like legislative, like the way that the
Mm.
Constitution has been interpreted, or at least just like or even like
Mm.
maybe it
Yeah.
was once better and now it's worse, or I don't know,
Yeah.
like
I think it's so part of it is a legislative problem. Like part of it is sometimes states pass laws to sort of like I don't know, make it like like three strikes as an example. Like
mhm,
when California passed three strikes, it was a way to there was this idea in the media that it was really easy for people to get released from prison on like really serious crimes. And so we had to make sure that people went away just for really long periods of time for even really like not very serious crimes. So part of it is legislative. And state legislators do things like that all the time. And it's often in response to something very terrible that happens. So there's like a really bad crime. And then they're like, oh, we got to do, law and order and like fix stuff and make it, make more crimes for people to be convicted of and make it more easy for people to be convicted of crimes. Um, and part of it is like, I don't know, like part of it is social, I think, and part
I
of
was
it
I was
is
about
like
to get into that, yeah.
economic. It's like part of the problem is that there are people in our society who have material needs that they can't meet, and so they use whatever they can use in order to like they steal, right, because
Yeah.
they're homeless and they can't afford food, or they're homeless and they're drug addicted, and so they need to get stuff to like fuel their addiction. Um, and they so there's like antisocial behavior that comes out of that. But
Yeah.
like, so I think it's like a legislative problem, a social problem, an economic problem. This pick your poison.
Yeah, I'd like to add one. I think
Yeah.
it's, sorry, this has mostly just been me asking you questions, but I'm going to start talking now a little bit. But
No. Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like, if you disagree with me at any point, I would love to debate about anything I'm saying. But I see like, if I could point to one problem the most as what is wrong with our criminal justice system, I
Mhm.
actually see it as a cultural problem. I just
Okay.
think that like there is this idea that not everyone, but a lot of people have that like when someone commits a crime, it's like go to jail or whatever. Or even
Hmm.
even when someone does something bad, like and it's famous and it gets popular and people are talking about it on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and someone gets like 10 years, they're like, that's not enough. Like they should have gotten life or whatever. I just feel like there is a really big disconnect between like I just feel like people don't even understand exactly what that does to somebody. Like I don't
Yeah.
think that people like understand what it means to like be in prison for an
Hmm.
extended period of time. Not even if it's like, a prison where the warden's really nice and whatever.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'm 21 years old. Like people go to prison for longer than I've been alive. Like
Yeah.
I can't fathom that. Like I feel like I've
Yeah.
lived a lifetime already. And I
Yeah.
just think that there's like a little bit of a and this I think this ends up becoming like a legislative problem. It ends up becoming a social
Hmm.
problem. But I sort of see the root, at least in my opinion, the root cause of like we as a society like we the term vagrant, I've heard this a couple
Hmm.
times recently, people talking like, oh, he's a vagrant or whatever. Like that's not true. Like it happens with like homeless people too, where you're like, oh, that's
Hmm.
just like a homeless guy. Actually that's like a human being who's like
Hmm.
down on their luck. um and I just think we have this desire to like push people away and just like throw them in the hole and forget they
Hmm.
exist. Because and so that's what that's sort of my opinion, but I'm curious to hear
Yeah.
what you think about that.
Yeah. No, I think I think a lot of that is right. Like, I think, and I don't know if this is a particularly American thing. I think it is,
Yeah.
but the like punitive stuff that you're talking about. So like, people are like, oh yeah, that guy got 10 years in prison. That's not enough. Like, send him away. Um, I think we have this attitude in our society that just is very kind of, yeah, punitive when it comes to, people breaking the laws. And um, you know, obviously like spending a long time in prison, I think a lot of people kind of can't conceptualize like what that really means or what it does to your psyche, and like, how much it ruins your life or ruins your capacity of like going back into society. But even spending like a day in jail,
Yeah.
I don't think people, because I go to jail all the time. I am seeing my clients there, and having been into like jail systems in California and New York, um, even jail is something that I don't think people really realize, like how horrible it is. Like, you have absolutely no control over anything that you're doing. Um, you have no privacy. You have no right to privacy. Like, you can't, you're, a officer can walk into your cell at any time and just search whatever you have. You can't buy anything unless somebody from outside puts money on your books and money in your commissary so you can buy stuff. Um, I don't think people have any idea how horrible it is, even in a jail that's like pretty nice, and
Yeah.
that's leaving aside jails like Rikers, which New York has committed to closing theoretically, that are famous for having more problems.
Yeah. Eventually.
Um, I mean, I don't, I don't think that's going to happen. But and so yeah, I think there is sort of like a cultural, like this learned behavior of like just sort of reflexive
Yeah.
punishment, um, that is part of the problem. Um, and I mean, look, like, the thing is, if somebody, like somebody does something violent to like one of your family members, it's natural and totally understandable and like probably right. It's good that your individual response to that is going to be, yeah, I want that person punished and I want them punished like,
Very badly.
forever.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a reason that we don't allow the victims and the families of victims to do the punishing in this society. Like we like theoretically we have this system that's supposed to, create some separation and figure out what's fair, and sometimes what is fair could be prison and like some kind of very serious punishment. But it's probably going to not ever be as much as a victim would want or the family of a victim would want. And that's also good,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, well, because the whole point is that you have to take all emotion out of it. So we're talking about like prison time length here. I'm in the EU, and this is making me think about, the kinds of systems they have here.
Mm.
And I am aware, and I know that you're aware of this too, that lots of countries, especially here, have maximum sentence times.
Yes, yeah, mhm.
Um, I guess could you explain what that is?
Yeah, so, in so there are different kinds of, incarceratory sentences, so sentences that are gonna involve you being behind bars, and one of them is jail, which I've talked about, and that could you could be in jail because you have been arrested and you can't pay your bail and you're just waiting trial, or you could be in jail because you've gotten sentenced to jail for some kind of, like, relatively minor offense, so, like and that's some people refer that to doing time in county. County is jail, and that means like basically either pretrial or like a short-term sentence. Um, you the other incarceratory option would be prison, and prison is for people who've been sentenced to some kind of felony. And so different states do it differently, but in California, you could get sentenced to a term of years. So you could get, for example, a 4-year sentence. And then, after you've served whatever the policies say that the percentages that you're supposed to serve before you're released, you serve your sentence, you get released, and then maybe you're on parole. And then that can be so you can be held like a 4-year sentence or a 10-year sentence or an 18-year sentence. And that all that means is basically you have to be in prison for a certain amount of time and then you get out of prison. Um, in the United States, we have sentences that go all the way up to life without parole, which means you never get an opportunity to get out of prison. You're in prison for the rest of your life until you die. And we also have the death penalty, which I'll leave aside for now. But some countries have basically no matter what and I mean, I guess this should be obvious, but generally, the more serious a crime you're convicted of, the higher the sentence you're going to get, the more likely it's going to be that you're closer to like life or life without parole. Some countries have maximum sentences, meaning no matter what crime you're convicted of, no matter how serious it is or how violent it is, you can only go to prison for a certain amount of time. And I think like the Nordic countries are one of these. So I forget if it was Norway or Sweden. There was that case a few years ago, or maybe it's 10 years ago at this point, where this guy I think shot a bunch of people or stabbed a bunch of people, and he got like a 20-year sentence. And that's that's it. And I think the way it works is after 20 years, he can get reviewed and then they'll like decide if they think he should still be in prison. But you can only ever get a 20-year sentence. And that's like completely different from the way that the US does things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about it? Like, I mean, I like it. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's
I
great. And
mean,
I think like, I remember I talking about this with other people and being like, oh man, but like, then, you can do this horrible, horrible thing and only go away for 20 years or whatever. But like, this goes back to what I was saying before. Like, 20 years is such a long time.
yeah,
Like,
it's a really long
I
time.
have been
And I
alive
also
for
like,
one
I
more
think
year than that.
so that thing you were saying is like, oh yeah, you can only go away for 20 years, so you could do something terrible and then you'd only get 20 years. Like, I don't think that's the way people decide to commit crimes.
Yeah.
Like I think we have this idea that like, you're going to deter, right? Deterrence is one of the concepts that people use to sort of like figure out what the punishment should be. And, the idea is if I know that the punishment for a crime is going to be really, really, really serious, I'm going to be less likely to commit that crime. And I don't think there's any basis for like that doesn't really have a basis in psychology. That's not the way that people decide things. Or even if it's a way people decide things, it's not if you're engaging in criminal behavior, you're probably not like starting from a rational perspective of like, well, I would like to punch this man in the face, but I know that I will get a sentence of, 15 years if I do so. And so I'm not going to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
Like that's just not the way. But yeah, no, I think I think that kind of that like maximum kind of system is good. And I think I mean, I think for I the I think there are people even in these countries, right, where you can only get a 20-year sentence. There are people who will probably end up being in prison for the rest of their lives because they can't be made safe in the community.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that kind of system is just more merciful and just. And I think it sort of starts from the assumption that if you're going to spend that much time in prison, you will probably, hopefully, have some capacity to rehabilitate yourself and be in a place where you can be safe in the community,
Yeah.
or you should get a chance to be safe in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and I think it's just like I think merciful is the right way. Like I think especially in the US, like I don't even think people really realize like how unmerciful like the US can be from a criminal justice perspective if you just like look at
Yeah.
other countries. And then they'll point to like, well, look at so and so country and wherever they just shoot people dead or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, like we're not that bad. But
Yeah.
like, you can always do better. Okay, so in talking about like specific policies like that, I have a question for you.
Mm,
Um, and we're like probably like nearing end time here.
cool.
Um, but I have a question for you. If you
Mhm.
could enact a single criminal justice reform right
Mm,
now, press the
mm.
button, what would it be? And it can't be broad like, oh, I'll change this, I'll change that, just one.
Oh boy.
And you can take your time with this one.
Yeah, no, this is, oh gosh, just one. Okay. Um, I think that, I mean, and this is, I like, I will explain this if you want me to, because
Yeah,
we
please.
haven't talked about bail, but, I think probably the thing that I would do would be to create a no cash bail system. Um, and so what that means is basically if you, if you get arrested for a crime, there is an appearance, like you get brought into court, and that could be either in jail because you haven't gotten released, or maybe you just put yourself in court, like you show up in court and the judge makes a decision about whether you should be in jail pending trial. And in states that have a cash bail system like California, um, the judge has an option of just releasing you. And that was like called OR, or on your own recognizance, meaning I'm just going to release you on your promise to appear. You're just going to say to me, yes, judge, I will make all my court appearances, and I, judge, am going to release you. Some people get released on pretrial monitoring, so they might have, the Department of Probation is responsible for making sure they show up in court. And then some people, actually there's four different. So some people get cash bail, meaning the judge will say, okay, I'm going to hold you in jail until somebody goes and pays a bail of $10,000. And some people just get held without bail, and and that would be like for really serious cases where there's some kind of flight risk or danger to the community, people get held without bail. And I think one of the biggest things that contributes to the sort of like unfairness of our criminal justice system is that there are people who can't afford to pay their cash bail that just sit in jail pending trial. And that means that people plead guilty a lot more often to crimes that either, maybe they didn't commit or maybe they committed, but it's just not worth jail time. But the fact that they're in jail means that they sort of, it's like, but at a certain point, pleading guilty is the only thing that you can do to get yourself out of jail.
Yeah.
Um, and so what it means is that people who are poor, so my clients, um, just get punished more seriously for, stuff that's the same. Like my clients can commit the same type crime as somebody can commit who has money, and the person who has money is going to get a more lenient sentence. And part of that will be because they are not in jail, and so they can just wait and see if they get a better deal. And part of it is because of the sort of like social things that we're talking about, that maybe the judge sort of sees somebody on the other side of the case who like feels more like familiar to them. And so the judge might offer them something that's more lenient. But the bail thing is, I think, something that would be easier that's like a simple thing that we could do to just
Yeah.
make things more fair.
Yeah. And so you would eliminate cash bail as
So
in,
I would say like so there should be just like a system where it's either you're going to be held, like either the judge makes a finding that you are too dangerous to be in the community, or you're going to flee the county or flee the country. So you have to be held in jail without bail, or you get released.
yeah.
And you get released on, you get supervision, right? So like maybe you get an ankle monitor, or maybe, you have some kind of restriction on your liberty, like that, but you don't have to sit in jail just because you don't have the money to get
Yeah.
yourself out of jail.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of insane. Like I can't even really imagine where like any positive place where that could have come from. Like it's purely just a way for the government to make money off of people. It's like a crime tax. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
I mean, do
Yeah.
you
Well,
even know the original inception of bail?
I mean, I think the idea is that if you have to pay money to get out of jail, that if money comes out of your pocket, that you're going to be less likely, because basically the way bail works is, um either you just pay the amount of the bail and then the government just like holds it until the case is over and you get out of jail in the meantime. But most people use bail bond companies, and bail bond companies are basically companies that will like, somebody will go and like pay them some money, right? So say your bail is $10,000. I'm going to go to a bail bond company and pay the bail bond company $1,000. And the bail bond company will say, okay, we are going to post the bond. So we're going to put that money up with the court. And then you get out of jail and we get to keep your money. And the idea is, if you've paid money, you're going to be, oh, and also, by the way, like if you skip out on your bail, then the bail bond company can come after you for all of it, right? So you paid $1,000 up front. If you skip out on your bail, the bail bond can go to you and be like, okay, so now you owe us $9,000 because we paid money
Yeah.
for you and you left us in the lurch. So that's the idea, is that like you'll have some kind of investment in your case, and so you'll be more likely to show up to court.
Wait,
um
why would it make sense for a bail bond company to pay $10,000 for you if they're only being paid $1,000?
I mean, they're getting paid because the and I'm sorry, they don't the bail bond company, they don't end up paying the actual bond in most cases, because most people finish their cases
I
get
see.
resolved. And so
I
the
see.
only
Okay.
time that the money has to actually go to the court is if the person skips out, so they miss a court date and the judge says, I'm
Oh,
taking away
right,
this
right.
bond.
Sorry, that's my
And
bad.
then the bail bond company has to go in and pay that money. So it's in the interest of the bail bond company to make sure that their people show up in court, because
I
otherwise
see.
they have to pay money, right? So the way that they make money is they have all of these fees coming to them. So they get, like you got a $50,000 bond, I got $7,000 from you. And then, most of the time they don't have to pay the $50,000, and they do get $7,000, and they
Yeah,
get,
I see.
thousands of dollars for every single bond that
I see. Yeah,
they,
I forgot it
yeah,
was sort of like an insurance thing. I forgot
it is.
that
It's
was my
like
bad.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I did
perfect.
I did
Let's put
not I didn't do a great
insurance
job at explaining it.
in even more capacities of our life. We need insurance for everything.
Everything, just everything.
I fucking hate insurance. I'm sorry. I really, that's like my own personal, like, I have such a frustrating distaste for insurance just as a system. Like, I just hate it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
horrible.
Whatever. I fucking hate insurance. That's the button I'm pressing. Just remove
Yeah, get
insurance.
rid of insurance. Okay.
Um, all right. So this has been really, really interesting. So it's that time of the century, or not the century. It's that time of the decade, where it's been 4 years. We have an election coming up,
Oh, we sure
and
do.
we sure do. And it's an election that is very wrapped up in what I would describe as the criminal justice system.
Hmm.
Maybe not. I don't really think the candidates, for those who don't know, there's two candidates. There's Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
Just in case you
Um,
weren't aware.
in case you weren't aware or aren't from America. Um, and uh, and I don't think that, either of them are really focusing a lot of their policies right now, specifically on what I would like quote criminal justice, but like,
Hmm.
the border is really involved, and like that often really
Hmm.
becomes like a criminal justice issue, probably a different
Yeah.
one than from what you often deal with. Um,
Well,
but I
I don't know. A lot of my clients are non-citizens.
Oh, well, then there's that. So then it's
Hmm.
absolutely something. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious to hear, like, do you as a public defender often look towards these elections, and
Mm.
how do you feel about them? And this one in particular, like, I don't know, like, how do you feel
Hmm.
about it?
Yeah, I mean, so I am interested in politics just personally. That's just like I always have been. And so um it's just very natural to me to like be following the
Yeah.
elections. As a public defender, I think I mean, and as far as it relates to my job, I think actually the immigration like talk is probably the most directly relevant to
Hmm.
me because obviously, Trump has made a lot of hay out of the idea that immigrants are taking our they're making housing costs go up
Yeah.
and they're taking all of our jobs and they're committing crimes and so we have to deport all of them and I'm going to solve all of the countries by deporting all of the people who have come to this country who are not citizens and so that's like super scary for me and there's a lot of clients that I have that and I'm not like going to be shocking anybody by saying like there are a lot of people in this country who've are not just non-citizen, like they don't have citizenship, they don't have legal status maybe in any kind of way, but they've been here for like 20, 25 years
Yeah.
and they work and they pay taxes and they live in our communities and they do our service jobs and they are they don't they don't deserve to be separated from their families and deported. So this election in particular, um, I mean, I just like my public defender heart, obviously, in addition to just thinking that Trump is abhorrent for like a bunch of other reasons. I'm like, yeah, I really hope that it goes the other way because um not that the Democrats have a stellar immigration policy card that they've
Yeah.
been playing, but it's going to be better
Yeah.
than whatever terrifying shit Trump is promising on the
Yeah.
immigration front.
Yeah, I think I wanted to ask you, I guess, just because, well, the Democrats have nominated a prosecutor, a former prosecutor, as their nominee.
Yeah,
One from California
from
who
California. Yeah,
was
yeah,
the district attorney of California. And
yeah.
I'm aware of a lot of things that I guess progressives would point to as negatives,
Hmm.
on Kamala's record as a DA. I'm also aware of positives too.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess, like, I guess I was curious to hear what you thought about like it, and if you're like, if there's anything you're looking forward to, if you're mostly just like, oh
Hmm.
man, like, couldn't we have gotten a public defender president or something? But
Yeah.
maybe this is too
Well, yeah.
obvious. Like, maybe it's just obviously like, you'd rather a better option.
No, no, no. I mean, I think so. I think that like the prosecutor thing, like, look, Kamala is has made she is a cop. I mean, or she was a cop in the sense that like she was law enforcement.
Yeah,
She was a district attorney and then she was an attorney general. I think she's made a lot in her career about like being in law enforcement and like being, like being tough on crime. And I think she's been able to like soften on that a lot in this election because of who her opponent is. And so she is, I think, not having to, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people aside from people like me are really like I I think for a lot of people, her record as a prosecutor is a positive. And I,
yeah,
I think that that makes her, that's like she's powerful and she's professional and she's done things in her career to show that she has, is capable of acting as a strong leader, and her prosecutor experience supports that, right?
yeah.
So for me, I just as far as like her being a prosecutor, like, yeah, I mean that doesn't make me happy. And I um wish that we lived in a world where having somebody be a candidate who, I mean, and it's like maybe just wasn't even a lawyer. Like I know
Yeah.
Trump is not a lawyer, but like have a candidate who
Doesn't
doesn't
need
have any
a
kind of
legal degree.
relationship to
Yeah,
prosecution, like, or legal anything, I think maybe that would be kind of a better way to
yeah,
go. But obviously, even leaving it, I can leave aside my own sort of political complaints about Kamala because I think that the alternative is horrible. But she's that particular part of her record for me is a red flag, and I
yeah,
think that she's sort of like changed her, she's been a little bit of a chameleon. She's changed her
yeah,
approach to like how much she embraces that like I'm a prosecutor kind of thing. And right now I think she's benefiting from just not being able to talk about it a lot.
yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. Like, I hope you had
Yeah.
a good time, like
It was a blast.
chatting about stuff. I mean, you have to go to work, right? Like, don't you?
I mean,
Oh no, today's a
well,
Sunday. Never mind,
yeah,
today's
today's a
Sunday.
Sunday. Yeah. And
Oh,
actually
sweet.
today is a long weekend, which I am very grateful for.
Whoa,
And
you
it's
got
Labor
off
Day tomorrow.
Friday? Oh,
Yeah.
tomorrow's Labor Day. Right, 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 right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have that
Yeah. No,
here.
now that you're not in the country, you're like, oh, I don't know what day it
What's Labor Day? Well,
is.
actually, I go to Wesleyan and they don't celebrate Labor Day either. Classes start on Labor Day at Wesleyan. Yeah, I know, right?
What, on
They
Labor
call
Day?
they call themselves a liberal school and classes start on Labor
I
Day.
I object.
Yeah,
I object.
I
You should
know.
not
It's
have to be
terrible.
in classes on Labor Day.
Yeah, I mean, less even for me, more of like the teachers. Like that's the whole point.
No, exactly. They said they should get a break.
Yeah,
They
I
should get
know.
a
It's
break. Anyway,
ridiculous.
I'm very happy to have a break tomorrow. But yeah, I'll be back to work on Tuesday, scrapping and doing my
Yeah.
little dance in court. It's fun.
Hell yeah, amazing. For those who don't know, Kate is fierce in court. I've seen it. I interned with her, and you're a little bit of a fight. You're dirty. You do dirty work in court.
I'm no, I'm not
No,
dirty. I
no
don't
no no.
play
You're not
dirty.
dirty as in like for fighting dirty. I'm just saying dirty as in like you're good. Like you're good. Sorry, I
Oh,
keep
okay,
doing
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I keep saying things are dirty and people don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, no,
Anyways,
no, no. It's just that I'm
no,
it's just that I'm old, man.
no,
It's
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 not
it's
just you.
just
Young people don't get it too. I just don't make any sense. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Kate.
all right.
And uh, and,
Yeah.
shit, whatever.
You're great.
I'm
This
great.
is
I'm
great.
great. I'm great.
All
All right.
right.
Episode over.